Hey, Nancy Cogar here. I am so glad that you're here today. We are going to be talking about digital assets. Do you have digital assets? Do you even know what a digital asset is? Well, I used to look at it and say, I don't think most people have that, but it turns out that a lot of you do, and you may not realize it. I know you don't have to be Elon Musk to have a digital asset. It's actually much simpler than you might realize. So, welcome to Boomer Time. As I said, I'm Nancy Cogar, and I hope you check out my new book coming up, Boomer Time Blueprint. I think it's going to be a great resource for a lot of people, and I hope it helps with getting that plan together. Lots of good real life information, and you'll be able to get that soon. You can even pre-order it here on the website. So I hope you'll do that, and let me know what you think. So I am talking about digital assets today. Digital assets, what do I mean by that, right? Well, very few people, I think about digital assets when they're talking about estate planning. Most people think your house, your bank accounts, retirement plans, maybe personal property, jewelry, vehicles, all that kind of stuff, right? That's what we consider the subject of estate planning. What are you going to do with it? Who do you want to have it when you pass away? Well, very few of you, including me, I don't think about my email, my photos, or my business running from a laptop as being a digital asset. But the truth really is that today so much of our life is online, whether it's your bank account, your memories, even your work. Hey, even when you go to the doctor now, you've got to create a portal, right, with a password and information. You got to do that with your finances. You've got to do that when you call even customer service these days. But all these passwords, all this access, all of it constitutes digital assets. And things can really grind to a halt if people don't have that information. You don't want them to have it during your lifetime, right? Because it's private, it's yours, but that doesn't mean that you should leave it out of your estate plan. So when someone passes away or even becomes incapacitated, that information doesn't necessarily transfer to the people who need it, and it can lead to all kinds of problems. And, they could end up having to pay bills from their bank account. They may have passwords they don't know about. Access may be denied to some of these subscriptions or other service companies that you use. And, honestly, the law can't always fix that. So it can create some real problems. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today. So we're going to talk about why these digital assets matter in an estate plan and what can go wrong if they're ignored. And I'm not just saying, oh, yeah, you can reset your password and so forth. No, we're talking about really realistic digital assets. And you don't want to make things hard for the people you love if they have to step in and manage things, right? So for your own security, too, it's important to have details about your online life, That way, when you are gone, they know about it, they know how to handle it, and they know how to access it. So I got a question for you. How much of your life is locked behind a password? Doesn't have to be the same password, but how much of your daily life requires a password to access? Well, I start thinking about that, and there is a lot of passwords that I have trouble remembering too often, but a lot of access with passwords that other people don't necessarily know, right? So that's part of what we're going to talk about today. And I want to talk about the fact that, with AI and everything else that we've seen becoming more automatic, whether it's answering the phone and then you've got a recording on there, you've got to answer all these questions, you got to put in your credit card number, you got to put in your social security number, you got to put in your PIN before you can even talk to anybody, right? That's why digital assets are no longer optional when it comes to planning. Okay. I want your estate plan to focus on homes, bank accounts, retirement plans, and these assets, okay? We manage our finances, our healthcare, our communication, photos. Yeah, I know we all have our phones and we're taking photos all the time. You think they might not be valuable, but they're assets nonetheless, right? Family photos. There could be a real desire to have those for sentimental reasons. Business information and even investments online. People don't necessarily get paper records anymore, right? They don't have physical statements, and we're discouraged from sharing access. So, for all those reasons, digital assets are no longer extra or something they just kind of bypass. They are really foundational. I'm going to tell you more about how they are foundational and actually give you some opportunity to be able to organize some of those with a resource that I'm going to offer when I come back. Well, I'm tracking, the whole AI kind of development, and there's some interesting things that are being debated about how estate planning, how your daily life may change. I do talk about scams a lot, and just because of security problems, there are all these different layers now that we have put in place to be able to access something, right? That makes sense, but it does make it complicated. And digital assets are just like a key that would open access to something. So, this is an interesting issue. I have not seen anything proposed yet, but I would most certainly do that if I did here in Tennessee. But you are seeing banks, doctors' offices, court authority needing confirmation and verification of things before they will give out information. So I see a lot more of that. So really, the point here is traditional estate authority, I think of letters testamentary, things like that you get when you open a probate. They may not automatically extend to digital life. I don't think we've figured that out yet. The digital assets themselves are becoming central to estate planning, not just as an add-on, but I want to talk about some of the trends that are related to that. So I mentioned paperless planning and banking and billing, right? You need access to be able to access those things. I even called a credit card company that I got a bill in the mail late, and they asked me more questions, and they wouldn't even give me my account number, right? So it makes it hard to pay an account if you can't get the account number. So that's what I'm talking about, stuff like that. So if you passed away, how is your family going to continue to pay your mortgage, right? If you don't have paper billing and you don't have the personal ID, your secret code, you don't have the access information related to how you get into the bank account. You may go to the bank and they'll ask you for a PIN. You're not going to be able to pay that mortgage payment if you can't access those things. And this is beyond death and dying. Say you end up in the hospital, right? And you're there for 2 months. Well, your mortgage is certainly going to get behind, and you'll probably come home to a foreclosure notice. So this is what I'm talking about. The trend is multiple access factors for work and online business. Then you got to confirm who you're really talking to, right? As paperless billing, banking, and increased reliance on portals for healthcare. My doctor doesn't call me anymore, sends me a note and asks me to link into my personal portal with all my secret password information just to find out what the results of a blood test, or when my next appointment is. So it could really complicate things. And that's what I thought it was important to talk about. So there's some issues too with, vulnerability and, I like to pay attention to those because if you've got caregivers or, who has access to your portals, right? If it's a part-time caregiver, somebody like that that's not bonded, that doesn't have, that you don't necessarily trust, are you going to give them that online access? Your family's going to want to talk about that. You're going to want to think about that, especially bank account information and things. It's a serious issue. Not only that, older adults are not necessarily as comfortable with transitioning to digital systems as a 14-year-old. I mean, that just goes without saying, right? But even me, like I said, I've got in my career, I've got access to courts and so forth, and I have to give not one, not two, but sometimes triple confirmation. And that all requires different things. So here's another point. Business owners that don't have succession planning, let's say the business account is all on a cloud. How do you access that, right? That could really cause some issues with moving forward in operations if you can't access important documentation. And then we've got, families spread all over the place these days. So just not having them nearby can cause complications. I not want to give you something to worry about, but I do think that paying attention to some of these issues, digital assets, passwords, access, account numbers, all those things, that has to be included in an estate plan, in a confidential part of an estate plan, but without complicating it, you need to think about these things. And to help you with that, I've got a resource that helps with an inventory of digital assets, maybe even helping you to think about what is a digital asset. And you can go to my website, nancycogar.com, and I've got a brand new feature there that has all kinds of resources available. But you can find that digital asset inventory. You can also find it at the end of the show notes for this episode. But those are free. They're just additional kind of resources that I want to provide for you so that you can have all this information organized. You can be aware of it. That way, when you sit down to do your estate plan, you'll have more of the components that I think will protect you and your family moving forward. So I would say create that digital asset inventory and identify not primary, but priority accounts. Designate a digital fiduciary. Hey, that's an interesting idea. We've got fiduciaries, or you probably know it more as powers of attorney, things like that. They have a fiduciary responsibility to managing things on your behalf as if they're you. So they can't have a personal motivation for money or decisions and so forth. Digital fiduciary, I think that is absolutely something that we will be seeing separated out from some of the traditional ways of thinking about fiduciaries. Like I said, hard to believe, but sometimes we take orders down to certain banks. All banks are different. They all have their own regulations and so forth. But if we take them down to certain banks that we know are persnickety, sometimes even having a court order delays them from acting. This is real stuff, okay? Coming from a lawyer that experiences this quite often. So you want, like I said, you want to think about it. What about email? Well, if you're not getting bills in the mail and you're getting correspondence mostly through your email, that can be a gateway to a big part of your information, right? If you got cloud storage, like I said, for businesses, for photos, important documents, that requires access. And even Zoom, some of these meeting rooms and so forth that we have these days, that's part of our community. We wouldn't think of that in the traditional way, but it requires a digital key, to access those things, a password. You're banking online, that's going to be something you want to look at, right? Online stores, Amazon, right? You buy all kinds of things on Amazon. Somebody becomes incapacitated. How are you going to get on Amazon and order something that maybe they don't subscribe to, but they order it on a regular basis, something they need? Prescriptions, same thing, right? When you start thinking about it, you think, wow, this really does cover a lot more than you would realize. Cryptocurrency, EFTs, electronic fund transfers, digital collectibles, gaming assets, Bitcoin, like I said. It's more complicated than you would think it would be. You might have just said digital assets. I don't have any of those. I don't have a boatload of cryptocurrency somewhere. This is more than that. It's really more than that. And you don't want to lose some of these things. Here's the real world complication from all this, okay? These entities, banks and so forth, don't have to give you access or these passwords. So what are you going to do if you get locked out? That's a big problem. If you don't have access and you get locked out, that's going to require some help from a professional lawyer, something like that. And it's going to cost money, time, energy. If you get locked out, passwords can't be reset at that point, most likely. You might miss some important notices, time-sensitive notices. The accounts themselves can get flagged, frozen. Photos and videos, they can be deleted. Oh yeah, so what? But I mean, if you're talking about a picture of, your grandchild, that's fourth generation grandchild, you don't want to lose that, right? Maybe family gatherings. There's good photos online. Cloud storage can be purged. Hey, what if the subscription runs out? They don't care, right? They're giving you a service. Crypto assets even can be unrecoverable. And try to track that, people. Try to track that. Fraud can go unnoticed, right? You can't reach anyone. I could go on and on. That's why I wanted to bring this up. It's something to make your eyes glaze over maybe when you're talking about digital assets, but it is a lot more specific to our lives than you would realize. And like I said, I do think that the system is going to change with the advent of all this security, all this digital access. So I don't know what the future holds, but I'm watching it. Well, if I still don't have you convinced about the importance of digital assets, I want to talk a little bit about potential problems, kind of bigger problems. If you don't learn how to better manage and protect these things, this is an ever-changing area. We are becoming more and more kind of online paperless society. And in the same breath, we've got all these attacks on us from fraudsters and others who are trying to get access. And once they get that access, that's when they cause all kinds of problems. So, one of the big picture stuff now, okay, this is all changing. And it's really uncertain what the government is going to do, not only here in the United States, but worldwide. How are they going to classify and regulate these assets? This is a brand new thing. Are they going to be money? If you're looking at digital assets, it's going to be money. Is it going to be a commodity? Is it going to be a security interest? What kind of value is going to be associated with these things? Now, I'm getting a little bit esoteric, but the one thing that never changes is the value of good content. So it's got value, just as no determination on the actual value. Things that we thought were not of value before, see on one of my favorite shows, Antique Roadshow, right? And they bring that old dusty stuff out and they tell you it's worth $100,000. I'm sure it wasn't when the person got it at first, but you need to protect the things that you have. So yeah, I know cryptocurrency is one of those things that a lot of us still don't understand. And it is really volatile. People can, you hear the stories about people making all kinds of money, and then you hear about the ones that make nothing. Well, cryptocurrency still needs some stability. There are no shortage of people that are playing with it, toying with it, and investing in it in a real valuable way. But, that volatility can lead to significant financial losses. So, like I said about digital access, if something happened to you and say there was some instability with your investments and so forth, what would you want somebody to do, especially if they're managed online? Whew, that could be expensive, huh? I mentioned this before, but, security risks. Keep seeing these layers and layers of confirmation password, check the photos to see, whether you're really who you are, you're a bot. We haven't figured that out yet. We really haven't, so when it comes to scams and fraud, that is still just an area where these bad actors have just exploited the lack of oversight. You're not paying attention. Someone else is not paying attention if you're incapacitated. That's ripe for problems. And really, right now, when it comes to digital assets, they don't fall into a category where you would think consumer protection would be there. I think that's something that's also developing. But, if you called the police department and asked them about, digital assets, I'm not sure what they would say or how they would report that or how they would determine what kind of crime that was if someone took them or stole them or, it raises some interesting questions. So these are probably less than average things that you would think about, but they impact us just the same. So a lot to think about. So as you work through some of these things, I do really encourage you to think about how much of your life is paperless. How much of your life do you require a password to access what you're doing during your daily activities? Might surprise you. So I think it's a worthy exploration, inventory. I don't know. But thank you for listening. And like I said, coming up, I will have more on some of the things I'm tracking AI and looking at interesting ways that things are changing when it especially comes to management of our lives, estate planning, protecting our information and assets. So look forward to sharing that with you. So now I am going to say goodbye, and I will see you next time.